soulmates, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be showing you how you could sew the dress that the yoke inset dress that I showed you how to do previously. These are all the pattern pieces, so if you have not checked out that video, I'm going to put a link in the description box where you could find it. So these are all the pieces of the upper part, and what we're going to do, we're going to sew them together. So the first thing I'm gonna do is work on the yoke. So I went ahead and I fused interfacing on each of my fabric, and I also pad my bustier. Okay, so I'm gonna put this aside and let's work on the yoke. So this is my yoke. This is my yoke. And remember, you had to cut 2 pieces of yoke, right? You had to cut 2 pieces. So if I should open it, this is what you're supposed to have. What I want you to do is that I want you to go ahead and, as I said, pin them together. Pin it together so that it doesn't shift or move. And I want you to go ahead and sew your neckline. So there's a little trick that you need to know whenever you're sewing your neckline. So remember, we left 1/2 inch seam allowance. Whenever you're sewing your neckline, or when you're sewing net, do not backstitch. So I'm gonna go to my sewing machine, right? And I'm going to sew this net using 1/2 inch seam allowance that I have left. So I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna sew 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. But what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to backstitch when I start, and when I stop, I'm not gonna backstitch. So that's a little trick that you need to know whenever you're sewing net. Do not backstitch whenever you are sewing the net. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to sew the neckline of this net and come again and show you what to do. Okay guys, so this is what you're going to have. See, I went ahead and I stitched it, and I did not backstitch. So what you need to do is, when you are satisfied with what you have done, you're going to trim off the seam allowance quite small, and then you're going to flip it over, and then you're going to iron it. Okay, soulmates, so when you've ironed it down, this is what you're supposed to have. And what you're going to do now is that you are going to stitch the sides just to let it stay flat. So that's what you want to do. Allow this net to stay flat. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to secure this, stitch it down. Pins are very important when you're doing this project, because you don't want it to be shifting all over the place. It's gonna show in your finished work. So go ahead and pin this down so it doesn't move, and then run that stitch on the side here just to secure both of them together. So I'm gonna do that now. So this is what I have when I've gone to iron it down, and when I've gone to stitch down the sides, and I iron down it just to let it stay flat, because you want it to stay flat. You don't want it to have any bulges. So this is what we have so far. So I'm gonna put this aside for a little bit, and I'm gonna take the front part of this, and we're just going to attach the seam allowances both on the lining and on the fabric. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to take our seam allowance that we have left both on the lining and on the fabric. So I'm just going to do that now and show you what it looks like. This is the back, this is the front. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay guys, so I went ahead and I attached all my princess darts, even the ones at the back and the ones that are on the lining. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to fix the yoke in the front. Okay, so remember, this is what it's gonna look like. Okay, the yoke is gonna be here. So what I want you to do is that I want you to go ahead and put the yoke onto the fabric first. All right, so it's gonna look like this. So you're gonna take this side and pin it down, and if you want, you can go ahead and stitch it. Okay, go ahead and stitch it down so that you ensure that it is flat. Okay, so I'm pinning it down like this. I'm pinning it down. Remember, you're taking 1/2 inch seam allowance. Don't mind that this is skinny. That's just how it is. Okay, so this is what you're gonna have, like this, and then you're gonna do the other side. You can go ahead and attach the lining to it first, but this is just the easier way to do it. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you pin it. Ensure that when you check here, remember we left 2 inch here. Check it to see if it's 2 inches. Okay, so you'll know that you're on the right track. So you see, if I should check on this part, you see that it's 2 inches, right? That is what we have left. So that's what you're gonna go ahead and you're going to take. You're going to take your allowance, and then you're going to attach the lining to it. So the lining is gonna look like, all right, so let me attach this and then I show you how to do the lining part. Oh, I'm sorry guys. I was there talking to you and I realized I didn't start the camera. So remember that this is how your work is gonna look when it's done. So I went ahead and I stitched down the net. This is what it looks like. So your work is gonna look like this when it's done. See, it's gonna hide the rough edges. So what you're going to do is that you're going to take this side and you're going to flip it like this. Okay, you see how I flip it over? And then you're going to take this here and you're going to stitch it down. So the net is gonna be in between it and you're gonna stitch this down like this. But be careful when you're stitching that the net doesn't catch up in what you're doing. You could also use this. You could also use this as a guide to stitch the correct thing, because it's stitched on 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I'm gonna do that now and show you what to do next. So this is what you're supposed to have. Ensure that this net is nothing, there's nothing catching up in it. Okay, it's flat, it's nice, and it's okay. This is what the inside looks like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to trim off some of the seam allowance in here. But before you trim it off, ensure that you have there's nothing catching. The net is not catching on each other or catching up, because if you cut off your seam allowance, that's it. You can't go ahead and adjust again. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut off the seam allowance. Alright guys, so what you're going to do now is that you're going to squish all this inside like this. You're gonna squish it all inside, because now you're gonna finish the armhole. So this armhole goes with this one, right? This one goes with this one. So you're gonna squish this inside. Put this one inside like this, and then you're going to go ahead and take your 1/2 inch seam allowance, notch it. Then you're going to pull it out, and then you're going to do the other side. So I'm going to do that and show you what it looks like. Okay guys, so this is one armhole done. See? This is the first armhole, and then you're going to do the same thing. Squish this inside. Turn it over like this. Go ahead, do the other one. Okay, remember to cut it off and then notch. Okay guys, this is what you have. This is what you're supposed to have, okay? Everything should match perfect. You realize that? This is what it looks like on the inside. This is beautiful. All right, so what we're gonna do, set this aside. This needs to be pressed. And we'll work on the back now. And the back is easy. All you have to do, go ahead, finish the neckline and the armhole. Turn them on each other. Finish the neckline. Remember, you have 1 inch seam allowance, so you do not sew that in for your zipper, right? And you're gonna finish the armhole, finish the neckline, and then we're gonna attach the front to the back, okay? And then put the rest on the bottom. Okay, so mates, so I went and I did the back. So what I'm gonna do now, you're going to take the back. This is the back, this is the front. You're going to take the front. So this is the front, this is the back. You're going to put it with lining to lining. Put it in between the shoulders now, because now we're going to join it. All right, and you're going to match up the sides pretty well, and the neckline and the sides must match perfect like this, okay? And you're going to take this one, so it must look like this, and then now you're going to take your seam allowance that you have left, okay? Ensure that both of them are together and they're at the same place. You don't want any trouble. Then you're going to take your 1/2 inch seam allowance that you have left at the top. I'm gonna do that now. So after you have attached it, this is what it's gonna look like. See? It needs a good press. This is what it's gonna look like. Needs a very good press, okay? All right, so what you're going to do now is you're going to attach them at the sides. So lining to lining, fabric to fabric. You're gonna attach it like this at the sides, okay? You notice everything for me match up. That's what you want, okay? You want everything to be nice, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead now and attach it at the sides with my 1 inch. Remember, I left 1 inch at the side, okay? So I'm gonna do that now. Okay guys, let me just show you something before I end it. So I went ahead and I finished the top half. So this is what okay guys, so this is what the top half looks like when I'm done, okay? This is what it looks like. Really nice. Remember, you have to ensure that whatever you have left here, you have it there, okay? All right, but there's something else I want to show you. So I went ahead to attach the bottom part of the dress to the top. But this is a bit tricky and you need to know how to sew it. So the first thing you do is match up the middle. Find the middle of the top and match it up with the middle of the skirt part. So this is my middle right here, and I attach it to the middle of the skirt. Then I went ahead and I sewed this part. See, I went ahead and I sewed it. That's the first thing I do. I sewed the net to the lower part. Then I took one side and I pulled my lining out of the way like this. Then I sewed the rest, the top of the dress to the bottom part from the edge all the way until I reached this point, the seam allowance, and I stop. Okay, because we're talking about getting a clean seam, clean finish for this dress, so you stop right there. Okay, and you do the same thing on this side. You go ahead, you start sewing with your 1/2 inch seam allowance. When you reach to this point right there, you stop. Okay, so this is what it looks like so far. This is the inside. So the only thing that's left to do is to attach the zipper. So you're gonna go ahead, attach your zipper on this part of the main fabric. Do the same thing, and just like I told you, you must leave the 1 inch here. You're gonna fold the lining in, but when you're through, you're not going to sew it like this for the raw edge to be like this. You're going to fold in your 1/2 inch, and then it's gonna look something like this. When it's done, it's gonna look something like this after you have folded in your seam allowance. And all you're going to do is you're going to do what they call a stitch in the ditch method to seal it up. So you're gonna just stitch right in that seam right there. You're going to stitch in that seam to attach the lining back to the main fabric. But when you reach this part, all you're going to do is that you're going to use your needle and thread and fix it. Okay, just fix it in, because it's gonna be something like this, and you're just gonna use your needle and thread just to tack it. So this concludes the end of this dress. Okay, you just need to hem it. Okay, and that's all. So if you find this helpful, do not forget to give me a giant thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe. Turn on the post notification bell so you'll be notified each time I make a video. Until we meet again, I'll see you in my next one. Bye.